preview video, not of great 70s band Genesis, but the story of Genesis in Paradise Lost, Genesis 2.0, Milton's own epic retelling of the creation story from the book of Genesis. It's a preview of Paradise Lost, Book 7. I always begin in class by reviewing the invocation, which I think is a handy thing to do. And I want to, again, walk you through the summary of this chapter. Take your time. Feel free to pause the video and mark up your books. That's what I recommend doing. If you want to print these out, that's fine and have them nearby. But I definitely would do this. Lots is going on. Although plot-wise, this might be the easiest chapter because most of you already know what happens, right? You know this is Raphael's continuing Adam's education. And this part of the education isn't about the evils of Satan so much as about the beauty and goodness of God's creation. So I would bracket these sections of your book and make notes accordingly. So one, really importantly, the second half of this poem opens with another invocation to the muse. And this muse is a little different. It's the muse Urania, which we will talk about. Adam and Eve then respond to Raphael's story from book 6, which is the war. And Adam asks to be told the story of how things came to be. I think it's important, not unlike when you have a little kid, the natural inquisitiveness of Adam, I think, is important. 3, in light of that natural inquisitiveness, Raphael gently warns Adam to sort of put boundaries on his inquisitiveness. And I think this is something to pay attention to throughout the poem, that we know Milton in his bones values man's ability to ask questions and to challenge commonplace wisdom and things like that. So this is apparently sort of counterintuitive to what Milton normally thinks. It's really interesting. 4, God asks the sun to create the world. So now we're inside Raphael's story. So the sun is the vehicle of creation here. And interestingly, in terms of plot, mankind is created to sort of create a sort of numerical replacement, that they've lost a certain number of angels, and we're going to create some new creatures, including mankind, to sort of replace the missing angels. 5, the sun exits heaven, goes through a gate, enters the abyss between heaven and earth, and prepares the process of creation. And then we get the creation of light on day 1, the creation of the firmament or sky on day 2. On day 3, we get the separation of the land and water. We get the sun and moon, fish and birds, land animals. And then day 6 continued as God pauses things and instructs the sun to make mankind. And also includes the command that we know that they cannot eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. There's a return to heaven. Angels sing praises. God rests. And Raphael concludes his story. And then, similar to the end of Book 6, we get a reminder of the frame that all of this is Raphael talking to Adam, telling him a story. Okay, I thought this would be handy, and I've included the original spelling. The King James Bible is arguably the most important book in modern English literature. It influences Shakespeare and Milton and everybody after them. So this is the story of creation. Now, Milton knew the Hebrew and would have it read to him and really valued his knowledge of Hebrew. But this is the story and the exact translation Milton would have grown up with. And we just want to read it together. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." God made the firmament and divided the waters, which were under the firmament, from the waters, which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. God said, Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he sees, and God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. The evening and morning were the fourth day. And God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. God created great whales, and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. And God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beast of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. And God blessed them. God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. God said, behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree, in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to every thing that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. So that's where Milton is getting his story. Now, this is the obviously important passage, and it may be a surprising one, but it's the beginning. It's the invocation of the muse, and it's because the muse changes, because the story is changing. Of course, we would have the muse of astronomy, the stars, Urania, because this is a story where, among other things, God's creating the universe. So this is really fascinating. Descend from heaven, Urania. So Urania is... Milton asks Urania to bring his thoughts from heaven, where he just left in Book 6, back to Earth. And he asks Urania for inspiration. Urania means heavenly, and was the muse of astronomy and stars. And her attributes are a globe and a compass, which is why she's pictured with them. So it makes total sense that as God is creating these things, Milton invokes this muse. Okay, so there's a lot of allusions here. I'm sorry, there'll be lots of stopping and starting. Descend from heaven, Urania, by that name, if rightly thou art called, whose voice divine following, above the Olympian hill I soar, above the flight of Pegasian wing. Again, the winged horse Pegasus struck the muse's spring, and when it did that, it created inspiration for poets. The meaning, not the name, I call. For thou nor the muses nine, nor on the top of old Olympus dwellest, but heavenly born. Before the hills appeared or fountain flowed, thou with eternal wisdom didst converse, wisdom thy sister, and with her didst play in the presence of the Almighty Father, pleased with thy celestial song. I love this, and I never noticed it until this year, that here we have this perfect Miltonic moment where we get a classical character and then wisdom, the inspiration of the Old Testament, the female personification of wisdom. We have the Hebrew inspiration dancing, playing in the presence of the Almighty Father, almost like in God's backyard. You have the playful interplay between a pagan muse and a Hebraic one. And what a great symbol it is that Milton is using everything he can, all the inspiration he has access to craft this narrative, which, as he says in the opening of the poem, attempts things never yet attempted in prose or in rhyme. Pleased with thy celestial song, up, led by thee into the heaven of heavens, I've presumed, an earthly guest, that's Milton, and drawn imperial air, thy tempering. With like safety guided down, return me to my native element. So he's asking the muse, pagan muse, to bring him from heaven to earth, mentally. Lest from this flying steed unreined, as once Bellerophon, though from a lower clime, dismounted on the Elean field I fall. I had to do a little poking around because this is a more obscure allusion, but Bellerophon was known, among other things, really as known as the slayer of monsters, like the Chimera in the Iliad, but also was known for taming Pegasus himself with the help of a charmed bridle from Athena. This is just a little nugget that Milton is connecting his story to the character who charmed this sort of unrideable mythological horse. Dismounted on the Ilian field I fall, erroneous there to wander and forlorn. Half yet remains unsung. So we have 12 chapters, 12 books. We're on book 7. But narrower abound within the visible diurnal sphere, standing on earth, not wrapped above the pole. More safe I sing with mortal voice, unchanged to hoarse or mute, though fallen on evil days though fallen, and evil tongues. So Milton goes from talking about sort of the landscape of the universe and where his mind has been and where he hopes it goes, to talking about the fact that he's living in evil days and maybe people won't listen. In darkness and with dangers compassed round and solitude, so that's his blindness, obviously, and also maybe some moral darkness. Yet not alone, while thou visitest my slumbers nightly. So he's acknowledging that while he's crafting this sort of alone, he's inspired by the muse. Or when morn purples the east, still govern though my song, Urania, and fit audience find, though few. Like, not many people probably going to be reading this, but I want them to be appropriate and fit. But drive far off the barbarous dissonance of Bacchus and his revelers, right, god of wine. The race of that wild rout that tore the Thracian bard in Rhodope, where woods and rocks had ears to rapture, till the savage clamor drowned both harp and voice. So Milton is connecting what he sees as the excesses of his time and the dangers he's surrounded by. He asked the muse to protect him from the fate that befell Orpheus, who's the Thracian poet, the Thracian bard, who was torn to pieces by Bacchus's followers after he offended them. So Milton is conveniently comparing himself to the greatest poet of sort of the gods of mythology, and is asking for the protection, frankly, that Orpheus didn't get, nor could the muse defend her son. So fail not you who thee implores, for thou art heavenly, she an empty dream. So really, really an interesting journey. It's not simply the standard invocation of the muse asking for divine help because the story is so huge. There's all kinds of inward sort of introspection. There's connections to Hebraic mythology, connections to pagan mythology, classical mythology, connections to current events and the extent to which anyone would even receive this song. So it's a really interesting journey. I wanted to just take one of the days of creation, not because there's lots of symbolic meaning, but just this gorgeous poetry. You read that in the King James Bible, it's very Sparks notey, right? It's gorgeous language and funky spelling, which is wonderful. But it's also, we don't get a lot of detail. Listen to what Milton does with the fifth day. And God said, let the waters generate reptile with spawn abundant, living soul, and let fowl fly above the earth with wings displayed on the open firmament of heaven. God created the great whales, right? That's right out of King James. And each soul living, each that crept, which plenteously the waters generated by their kinds, and every bird of wing after his kind. Again, echoing that of his kind, right? That everything has its place in God's creation. And saw that it was good, and blessed them, saying, be fruitful, multiply, and in the seas and lakes and running streams the waters fill, and let the fowl be multiplied on the earth. Forthwith the sounds and seas, each creek and bay, with fry innumerable swarm, and shoals of fish that with their fins and shining scales glide under the green wave, in skulls that oft bank the mid-sea, part single or with mate, graze the seaweed their pasture, and through the groves of coral stray. Or, sporting with quick glance, show to the sun their waved coats dropped with gold. He's just talking about fish, but he's pausing the King James Bible to show you the gorgeous imagery God's crafting as well. Not just the fact of fish, but the beauty of them. Or in their pearly shells at ease attend moist nutriment, or under rocks their food and jointed armor watch, or smooth the seal and bended dolphins play, part huge of bulk, wallowing unwieldy, enormous in their gait, tempest the ocean. There, Leviathan. Now, we remember from the early books, Leviathan is referenced in hell as well, but here it's creation. Here, Leviathan, hugest of living creatures, on the deep stretched like a promontory sleeps. If you remember, Satan is so big that he's almost like an island, right? That a sailor can confuse him for an island. That's how big Leviathan is. And we get that little comparison here, which is interesting. Seems a moving land, and at his gills draws in, and his trunk spouts out a sea. Meanwhile, the tepid caves and fens and shores, their brood as numerous hatch from the egg that soon bursting, with kindly rupture forth, disclose their callow young. So birds are hatching. But feathered soon and fledged they sum their pens, and soaring the air sublime, with clang despise the ground. Under a cloud and prospect, there the eagle and the stork on cliffs and cedar tops their eyries build. Part loosely wing the region, part more wise and common, ranged in figure, wedge their way, intelligent of seasons, and set forth their airy caravan high over seas, flying, and over lands with mutual wing, easing their flight. That's an interesting detail. So steers the prudent crane her annual voyage, borne on winds. The air floats as they pass, fanned with unnumbered plumes. From branch to branch the smaller birds with song solaced the woods, and spread their painted wings till evening. Nor then the solemn nightingale ceased warbling, but all night turned her soft lays. Others, on silver lakes and rivers, bathed their downy breast, the swan with arched neck. Between the white wings mantling proudly, rose her state with oary feet. Like you can imagine a duck swimming, but feet like oars, oary feet. Yet oft they quit the dank, and rising on stiff pinions, tower the mid-aerial sky. Others on ground walked firm, the crested cock whose clarion sounds the silent hours, and the other whose gay train adorns him, colored with the florid hue of rainbows and starry eyes. Chickens and roosters, right? But Milton is honoring God's diverse creation by really taking his time painting these characters with the beauty that they've been given. The waters thus with fish resplendent and replenished, and the air with fowl, evening and morning solemnize the fifth day. It wouldn't be bad to just take your time and really deep dive on one of these days of creation. I love that he pays attention to this detail, that it's not simply Satan exiting hell in book 2 or the Son exiting heaven to go create earth in book 7, but Satan remembers writing book 7 that there's a gate in hell, and he creates this interesting parallel. Here is the sound of heaven's gate opening in book 7, 205. Heaven opened wide, her ever-during gates, harmonious sound. So the sound of heaven's gate opening is harmonious. on golden hinges moving to let forth the King of glory, the Son, in his powerful word and spirit coming to create new worlds. But it's harmonious. If you remember, in hell, this is what it sounds like. When sin opens with her key the gate of hell so Satan can go and tempt Adam and Eve, right? Thus saying, from her sin side the fatal key, sad instrument of all our woe, she took toward the gate, rowling her bestial train, forthwith the huge portcullis high up strew, which but herself, not all the Stygian powers, could once have moved. There's no sign that the gate of heaven is hard to open. It's because God's will is opening it. Then in the keyhole turns the intricate wards, and every bolt and bar of massy iron or solid rock with ease unfastens. Okay, it's easy for her because she has the key, obviously. On a sudden opening fly with impetuous recoil and jarring sounds the infernal doors. On their hinges great harsh thunder, and the lowest bottom shook of Erebus. Then they can't open, but one is discordant, and so Milton even pays attention to the sounds of the gates opening, and it's because the sort of grace of heavenly gates opening is met with harmony, and the evil and the curse of the hellish gate opening is met with discord. Milton always associates morality with sounds, and that's something really important. If you're a musician, this is a poem you should like. Here's some other suggestions for journaling or further consideration for a class or a reading group. What do you think is important about the fact that Satan isn't in book 7? He's also not in book 8 coming up. Why is that important? What does his absence do? 2, read over these creation hours, pick any of the day, and ask yourself, what does Milton add? He doesn't alter like the sequence, and he doesn't alter the sort of the skeletal structure of the King James creation narrative, but what does Milton add other than detail? What stands out about the detail? What does Milton tend to pause and really paint for us? 3rd, what do you think about the character of the Son here in his relationship with both God and his own creation? And then thinking about Milton's plan to justify God's ways to men, how do you think this chapter assists in that goal? I hope this helps you, and good luck with your reading.